comic books, hip-hop, but also because the project of analytically or politically fixing his ethnic, racial, or national selves is at odds with what I would consider his richest legacy. Basquiat's project gains in importance over time precisely because he was attentive to the limitations of national, ethnic, and racially based discourses of self, and often cast these as the antagonists of freedom. Without dismissing black sovereign claims in works like El Gran Espectáculo, History of Black People from 1983, Basquiat visualized history as a global node of transatlantic relations that was founded on and required the movement of ideas and peoples beyond nation states. Not coincidentally, Basquiat's skepticism towards narrow conceptions of black politics is linked to the three national contexts that shaped his own family's history: Haiti, Puerto Rico, and the United States. Haiti, from where Basquiat's father escaped political persecution, is both the home of the first successful slave revolution in the Americas, as well as a persistent case of a national state subjecting its citizens to abuse and injustice. Puerto Rico, where Basquiat's mother, Matilde Andrade, traced her roots, remains the most populous colonial possession in the world, as well as a political space where the majority of voters continue to prefer a colonial status than independence. Lastly, Basquiat grew up in the United States, a nation built on the removal of other constituted political entities and the imposition of US sovereignty on those subject populations. Through his work, Basquiat offers us then the possibility of understanding New York as inevitably produced by sometimes incommensurable elements, physical and mental, restlessly moving into the unknown, definitely not into identity. Basquiat also showed us that regardless of where and how we fit in the current cultural hierarchies, and even better if we have no place in them, we could draw a horse from nothingness and gallop. To study Basquiat is ultimately a long-term proposition. I have actually written two things after this, one on sovereignty and in Basquiat's work, and another in progress about Basquiat's mother. But one place to start is Hispanic New York. And I leave you with another place you could start, which are the last two sentences of, or the last sentence of this piece, which is the beginning of the next piece, which is, "The king is dead, long live the king." Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. You can see there is a microphone here in the aisle. We welcome your questions while people are lining up to ask questions of our scholars. Let me begin by asking one of my own. At several junctures in the book, it's noted that the big centers of Latin population in the United States were traditionally marked by one dominant national origin. Cubans in South Florida, Mexicans in the Southwest, in the cities of the Southwest, and Puerto Ricans in New York and the Northeast. New York has changed. South Florida has changed some. But overall, are these centers moving to where New York is today? Is New York showing the future of Latino demographics, or is it going to be an outlier because of the diversity in its Latino population? And you may have a long time to give an answer because no one's lining up at the microphones.
Gabriel, you want to pick up on that?
Very briefly. There is the example of Chicago, where you have a large Mexican-American community that's been there for quite a while, and it's been joined by new groups. And there also emerged a Puerto Rican community. And so Felix Padilla, a number of years ago, wrote a book about how these two communities came together politically. So in the case of Chicago, there's been some, there is a, at least for a period of time, there was there was a tradition of unity among the two, what at that time in the 60s and 70s were the two dominant groups in Chicago.
Milagros, if you take what you said during your presentation and play it forward another generation, do those national origin differences, are they likely to persist, or will there, over time, develop something different as people who are children today grow up immersed in a Latin culture, but one less tied to a nation of origin and more tied to New York?
For instance, in the Puerto Rican community, you have the 50th generation here in the United States, and there are many Puerto Ricans that they have been integrated into the American, way of life, and you find Puerto Ricans everywhere. Dominicans, in one sense, actually, you have, like the 10th generation of Dominicans here. And also something similar is happening, and we don't actually know that, but when you look at colleges and the big group of Dominicans in colleges, what is going to happen to those people when they graduate? And at the same time, you see these people in graduate school. So that represents, like a major difference with their parents and, like their communities. On the other hand, you have, a Latin American that is in poverty, in crisis. And crisis actually push people out of the country. So it's like in the Dominican case, and I can talk about the Dominican case, it's like you have that generation that came here in the 1960s, and now the children of the children of the children of the children probably are doing something different. At the same time, you see Dominican coming constantly to the city. That didn't happen with Puerto Ricans, though. The Puerto Rican migration stopped. At the same time, you have the same thing with Peruvian, you have the same thing with Salvadorian, and you have the same thing now with Mexican here in New York City. And these people, sometimes they surpass New York City, they stay in Florida. And if you look into Los Angeles right now, you're going to be amazed about the diversity of the city.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm very happy to be here. I heard about this on WBAI the other day, and I was trying to encourage some other people. I'm in medicine. I'm a physician assistant, and currently I work in school health. And I see exactly what you're saying about the Pandora's box and about this, what I call confusion at this time, because in a country like the United States where race, and even in the Western world, Latin America as well, where race becomes this kind of place that people are either pushed aside or hidden. When we ask children to define themselves racially on some of the questionnaires we give them, we have great confusion. There are some people that might come from Mexico. A little boy might say, no, I'm Azteca, I'm a Native American, because somebody told him, where the other child, who might be in this child's same family, might claim to be Spanish or Hispanic. So this is not a question, but this is more to show you that the reality of the confusion of demarcating ethnic groups, racial groups, and because many of the Latino kids that I see in school, they have no clue. You can see someone like a Sammy Sosa, who is obviously a black person, which the kids might not relate to him as being an African American, but he can be an Afro-Dominican, as Cubans call themselves, like Mongo Santa Maria, if you know, he considers himself an Afro-Cuban. So where does that all come into play in defining Hispanic and Latino? Because in this country, we've been balkanized as well. So I guess this is the question. What is the definition of a Latino or Hispanic? And I leave you for the rest of the night.
Good. I'm glad we're getting the easy ones out of the way first.
Actually, it's easy, right? I mean, according to the census, a Latino is whatever you, if you say you're Latino, you're Latino. So anybody that says they're Latino, they're Latino. So officially, that's how it's counted in this country. And I don't know if we can do any better than that.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that, that one point I make in this book